After that moment, his body finally gave in. He sank into darkness after a long period of unconsciousness, where a strange wolf-like creature with crimson eyes discovered him. The creature decided to grant him a single chance. As his life balanced on the edge, it told him that next time he must do better. A mysterious crimson energy flowed into his body. He awoke in confusion, staring down at his own legs. He raised his hand slowly, unsure whether he was even alive. Looking around the unfamiliar room, he noticed a stone pillar that seemed strangely familiar. A familiar voice suddenly asked whether he had finally woken up. It was Lena, alive and unharmed, teasing him about how long he had been sleeping. She said their mother had prepared food for a celebration and reminded him that today was his birthday. Their mother soon joined them, saying that he had just turned 15. He looked at his reflection and saw himself exactly as he had been 10 years earlier. Before him stood the memory of a peaceful day, a life he believed had been lost forever. He was completely stunned by this impossible reality. His family was here, safe, enjoying a beautiful day together. He wondered if everything that had happened had been nothing more than a terrible dream. He looked out at the village, whole and untouched by fire. But when he moved, he felt a strange power flowing through his body. A flower petal slowly drifted down from the sky, and he froze, sensing the world around him. Clenching his fist, he realized the strength of his future self was still within him, and he caught the petal with impossible speed and precision. He stared at it in amazement, while Lena watched from nearby. With icy clarity, he understood that this was not a dream. The memory of the burning village remained vivid in his mind. Lena's final words still echoed inside his head. The betrayal of his closest friend and the searing pain of the blade that ended his life, all of it had been real, a future he had somehow lived through. He looked down at his hands, the hands of a boy carrying the soul of someone who had seen far too much. Lena asked if everything was all right. The protagonist forced a smile, assuring her that everything was fine. Their mother called them over, announcing that the meal was ready. And for a brief moment, he allowed himself to enjoy this impossible gift, celebrating together with his family. At that same time, in another place, a group of riders raced through the forest. At their head rode a determined young woman with green eyes. She questioned the actions of the knights, worried about innocent villagers, but one of her men assured her that their target was the Galda district. A grim determination reflected in her gaze. One knight mocked the Galda, calling them livestock rather than citizens. A flash of cold anger crossed her face for a moment. She said nothing more and simply ordered them to ride faster. Back in the past, the protagonist tasted a spoonful of soup, lost in the familiar flavor. His mother teased him for becoming so sentimental, wondering why such a simple dish stirred so many emotions in him. Lena proudly announced that she had helped cook this time. The protagonist joked about the uneven pieces of vegetables and received a playful hit from his sister, while their mother watched them with a warm heart. But the protagonist's thoughts were far away. He kept trying to understand his return to the past, wondering if this was truly a chance to start everything again. His mother's voice broke his thoughts as she called his name, asking if he was still troubled about choosing his future. For a moment he was confused, remembering that at 15 every Galda man had to decide his path. Without a family trade, the choices were limited. He could stay in the village and work for very little, or leave and face contempt and exhausting labor elsewhere. The third option was becoming a mercenary, a dangerous path with high rewards. Though they possessed no magic, the Galda were known for their incredible physical strength. Their inability to be detected by magic made them perfect scouts. Yet this also made them easily sacrificed on the battlefield. A grim reminder of the fate that awaited most of them. And yet those few who survived could earn great wealth. He remembered his mother's embrace and the quiet fear in her voice. She admitted that his father's earnings had allowed the family to survive, but the thought of losing her son was unbearable. The protagonist knew how high the danger was and understood that this choice was a desperate gamble for survival. In his first life, he had chosen that path, and it had led him to the very top. He remembered the moment he met him, the determined eyes and firm gaze of a young royal who would later become his friend. But the memory was suddenly shattered by a sharp, alarming sound. The village bell rang loudly across the land, a clear warning of danger. The protagonist looked toward his home as a terrifying realization washed over him. He remembered a crucial detail he had completely forgotten. He suddenly rose from the table, warning his family to stay away from the center of the village, but they followed after him anyway. Turning back, he asked where they thought they were going. In his mind, a memory ignited, a gathering of robed figures, fanatics preaching about sin. Their leader called for purification to protect the purity of blood. He remembered how their twisted words echoed through the streets, branding the Galda as a disgusting stain, a darkness that had to be burned away from the kingdom. He knew exactly who they were. The Purification sect, a radical group that existed within the kingdom's dominant religion. Their beliefs were so extreme that even the church itself had declared them heretics. One of their core doctrines claimed that the Galda were demons who had to be erased. And it was on the protagonist's 15th birthday that they arrived at his home. After being driven out of the capital, the fanatics headed straight for the Galda district. With no real protection, the town was easily overtaken and subjected to their so-called purification. In his first life, the protagonist could only hide with his family, remaining a frightened boy powerless to stop the tragedy unfolding around him. But this time, everything would be different. He moved with the grace of a predator, tracking his targets. From the rooftops, he descended like a ghost, landing without a sound, a child's body carrying deadly skill. The leader of the sect continued his sermon, promising to cleanse the town. He raised a torch toward a captured woman, calling it the sacred flame of purification. But his speech was abruptly cut short when a shadow fell from above. The protagonist remembered the first rule of fighting mages: strike suddenly from outside their awareness and end the fight with a single decisive blow to a vital point. The leader collapsed before he could even understand what had happened. His followers stood frozen in disbelief. A child had just defeated the most powerful mage of their sect. One fanatic ignited his blade in rage, but the protagonist was already beside him, turning the weapon against its owner. He knew that only weapons infused with magic could pierce a mage's defenses. And if you didn't have one, you could simply borrow it. Another member of the sect began preparing a lightning spell, but chants that required spoken words were far too slow. In a single instant, the protagonist closed the distance. His gaze was cold, his goal absolute, and another fanatic was removed from the fight. He lifted his eyes toward the remaining three, nearly finished with what he had begun. But a voice from the archway suddenly made him stop. A new participant entered the scene, holding a civilian hostage. The protagonist realized his mistake. He had forgotten about those who had fallen behind. He quickly weighed his options, understanding that this was a trap. The fanatic declared that the woman's fate was sealed, and told her to blame the boy for what would happen next. The protagonist shouted, begging him to wait. He slowly dropped to his knees, raising his hands in surrender. The coward smirked, believing he had already won. He shoved the woman aside and rushed toward the protagonist to deliver a final strike. But from the fanatic's perspective, something strange happened. Looking down, he saw that the boy remained completely unharmed, while he himself now lay on the ground, unable to move. The remaining two fanatics saw this and swore that the boy would pay for it. Yet the last of them felt a heavy sense of dread. Around the boy, he sensed something terrifying and urged his companion to act quickly. But his partner chose to attack on his own. At that moment, another voice echoed across the square, and an icy spell burst into action. A wave of frost swept over the fanatic, catching him completely off guard. In an instant, he was trapped in ice, unable to move. Moments later, the green-eyed woman from the forest appeared with a group of knights, ordering them not to break the ice. She declared that the fanatics were under arrest by order of the kingdom. The man realized with horror that the royal guard had arrived. The protagonist himself was stunned. In his previous life, help had come much later. The frozen fanatic shouted for his men to attack the woman, but it was useless. They were already frozen in place. The woman calmly stated that the battle was over and ordered her men to take the prisoners into custody. Just like that, the threat was neutralized. The protagonist could only watch, realizing that his plans had been completely disrupted. The woman finally turned her attention to him and noticed with surprise that he was just a child. She was astonished that a boy had managed to defeat 3 mages alone. The protagonist looked away, unused to such attention. Her sharp green eyes seemed to see straight through him. A small grateful smile appeared on her face. She knelt down and thanked him, explaining that the fire mage he defeated could have destroyed the entire town. The protagonist glanced again at the fallen leader, while the memory of a burning village remained painfully fresh in his mind. She acknowledged that his sudden strike had saved countless lives. In that moment, the protagonist understood the connection. Because he had acted, the kingdom had responded sooner. She offered him a reward, but he refused, saying he needed nothing. Instead, he thanked her for arriving in time. Curious about the boy, the woman extended her hand and asked for his name. She introduced herself as Helen and made an unbelievable offer, an invitation to the Magic Academy. The protagonist stood silent in shock. The Magic Academy was a place he had never even dared to dream about. Helen explained that it was a prestigious institution founded by 3 nations to discover talented individuals regardless of their origin. The protagonist knew that name well from his previous life. Many of the world's greatest heroes had studied there, along with the most powerful mages. A clear question formed in his mind about why she had chosen him. Helen's gaze became sharp and carefully observant. She suggested finding a more secluded place to talk. Without waiting for his response, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him along. The protagonist was caught off guard by her sudden decisiveness. She admitted that it was her first time in this area and asked him to guide the way. A faint, knowing smile appeared on the protagonist's lips. He led her through quiet, overgrown ruins. They stopped at a secluded spot near a small stream. He confirmed that it was indeed as quiet as she had wanted. But her tone suddenly turned cold as she remarked that this was the kind of place where a person could disappear without anyone noticing. Suddenly, a massive magical circle flared to life around her. The protagonist's eyes widened as he realized this had been a test. She launched a powerful icy arrow toward him, but in a blur of motion he was already standing behind her. Helen was stunned. She sensed no teleportation magic and realized he had relied purely on physical technique, moving straight into her blind spot. His crimson eyes burned with focus as he held her arm firmly. She calmly noted that she felt no intent from him to cause harm, and therefore saw no reason to stop the situation. She also observed that he thought and moved like a seasoned warrior. The protagonist concluded that everything happening had truly been a trial. She confirmed this, admitting that she preferred to see things with her own eyes, and that she was now convinced he could face mages relying solely on skill. He still did not understand why that mattered. She believed that he might become the one capable of changing the fate of his people. The idea stunned the protagonist just as much as the future she described, a future she insisted was possible if he entered the academy. He realized this was not just about studying, but about the path of knighthood. Helen was surprised that he already knew about the system, and confirmed that with his abilities he could earn such a title. This system, known as the Knight's Honor, rewarded the most exceptional students. It granted them the right to establish a new noble house. Helen explained that the land given to them was often connected to their origins, meaning the protagonist could become the official lord of his own town. The realization of such a possibility weighed heavily on him. He considered the offer carefully, knowing he had never completely ruled out this path, and unlike in his first life, he was still young enough to try. However, before making a decision, 3 questions came to his mind. Helen seemed pleased and allowed him to ask them. First, he pointed out that the entrance exam required a recommendation from a noble. She assured him that this matter was already taken care of. The protagonist was surprised by her determination. She then waited eagerly for the second question. He reflected on the strange nature of the situation, a boy without magic seeking knighthood at a magical academy. She agreed that the path was unusual, but explained that everyone who had earned that title shared one trait. They had all gone beyond tradition and discovered a new principle of magic, whether through magical medicine or the study of magical circles. She explained that the principle of magic was not limited to casting spells, and that even overcoming mages without using magic could lead to knighthood. All the protagonist needed was to prove his uniqueness to the world. He struggled to fully understand the complex idea. Then she moved to the final question, her gaze focused and expectant. The protagonist, however, was not naive. He wanted to know what she would gain from helping him. She pretended to be surprised, as if questioning his lack of trust.